Okay. Hello, welcome to Open Heart Discussions. I'm Lacey Fisher, licensed professional counselor, supervisor, and registered play therapist supervisor. I'm also the owner of Open Heart Counseling, ATX. I'm so thrilled to be here today with my dear friend, Megan Humphrey, to kick off a small passion project of mine I've been thinking about for a while. Megan has a wealth of experiences for us to learn from. And so I'm so happy to have Megan here with me today, especially getting this started. So Megan, please tell us about yourself and your credentials or qualifications.
Yes, and thank you. And it is my privilege to be here with you, Lacey. Lacey was actually my first counseling supervisor and my first counseling job. And so it's really, really cool to be back with you. Thank you for having me. But yes, my kind of counseling career started back when, when I was an undergrad, and I knew that I wanted to work with victims or folks who have dealt with trauma. It was just something that I felt really called to. And so I actually got a job right outside of undergrad working for Child Protective Services. And I was actually working there while going to grad school to get my license as a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And working for CPS really opened my eyes to a lot of things. It was pretty astounding, the sheer number of reports that we got in, and just all of the ways in which, kiddos, elderly adults, different people who are vulnerable in our society are very mistreated. And that just kind of strengthened my need or desire to continue this career. So I knew when I got out of graduate school that I would be working with trauma victims, and I've continued doing that. So I was very lucky and just, I really can't imagine having a different start to my career, because Lacey hired me pretty much right out of graduate school. And I mean, I was thrilled. It was the exact perfect job I wanted. I still think it's one of the most amazing places to work. So Lacey hired me, and she was my supervisor. I worked at the Children's Advocacy Center with Lacey in Williamson County. And my experiences there, you can't replace them. I ended up staying there for about 7 years. And after Lacey left and moved on to start her practice, I actually ended up taking over her role, which was really cool as well, and was really easy because she did such an amazing job of showing me the ropes and showing me how to be a fantastic leader. And so wealth of experiences there. My caseload was primarily sexual abuse victims. We did also, assist law enforcement in this job with different investigations involving children, and of course, Child Protective Services. We did often give testimony or input into some of these investigations, and we had experiences in civil court, but also criminal court. And so for a first counseling job, I mean, I feel like I hit the jackpot. It was just everything that you could learn, as quickly as possible. And I had great support along the way. I had fantastic team members, Lacey being very crucial in that. And then here recently, I actually just recently left the CAC and transitioned in my career to the job that I'm in now, which is for the Department of Public Safety. And my job now, I feel like, kind of came out of the CAC, having worked closely with law enforcement, seeing how little support mental health wise that they have, seeing the stigma that still exists within mental health, within law enforcement regarding mental health. And when I saw this position with DPS, which was specifically providing counseling to first responders, DPS, troopers, rangers, everybody who works within DPS, who works with victims or trauma, and their families, I'm actually able to see them and their families as well. And so I transitioned in this job recently. I've just got here, 4 months ago, and I'm really loving it. It's very different, but I still feel right at home because, as we know, the law enforcement world does experience quite a bit of trauma themselves on a daily basis. And so that's kind of my my journey so far.
Yeah. And just to let others know a little bit about our work at the Children's Advocacy Center, right? That is a job where you are kind of thrown into a lot of stuff. There's a lot of hats that we wear as a therapist, like trying to keep that in the center of our world, but also knowing that we may have to help a child testify, help them get prepared to testify, speak with attorneys and law enforcement and CPS. And Megan and I are actually going to do a training on testifying and being armed for that in whether you're an agency or private practice. As that will be coming up. We'll be doing for the Hill Country Play Therapy Association. Megan and I have presented before to you on what children's advocacy centers are and what the role is, why they're so important for children to have a place, because it's so hard, right, for a young child to talk about, especially their sexual abuse. So that is, I know, work that she and I are both very passionate about, and that was kind of both at the beginning of our journeys there. And as you're telling us about your professional journey and the work that you're doing now, can you tell us why your role is so important, namely with law enforcement?
Yes, as we know, 2020 has been quite a year for law enforcement in general. There's been quite a bit of upheaval just within society regarding what law enforcement's role is, situations in which suspects or even innocent folks have died in the custody of law enforcement. And so this has been, a year for scrutiny within this team. And many would say, that's needed. However, it does have an effect on the family, within law enforcement. I would say this has been a pretty traumatic year for most law enforcement folks and their families. One thing in particular that stands out to me is the ways in which they're being perceived, either in the media or just out on the street. Most of the folks that come to see me, along with their spouses and their children, are definitely feeling hated, and definitely feeling a little disillusioned with their career right now. And beyond that, beyond 2020, this job, in my opinion, really isn't a job. It's kind of a lifestyle. Their work hours are typically over 50 hours a week. They don't get to spend a whole lot of time with their families. And the things that these folks see on a day-to-day basis, whether they're actually out on the streets as a patrol officer or as a sergeant at a desk seeing all the reports, or as a communications officer dispatching through these situations, these are the folks, nobody calls them when they're having a good day. Police get called, similar to therapists, when people are having their worst days. And so the things that they see, the death, the violence, and just really things that stick with you when you go home, things you can't necessarily just put aside. I think that's what made me feel drawn to this job, but also something that's it's never ending for law enforcement. And I think that that would affect anyone. You can have the best resources, the best support, the best therapy even, and you're still going to be really affected when there's a kiddo who has died in a car accident, or a family. These are just tragedies that happen every day, and these folks have to see them.
Yeah, so that makes so much sense. And I think there has been this shift of the importance of it, because, right, working around law enforcement at the CAC, they were very thankful of the mental health work that we did with the children. They loved us. But when we asked them if we turned it around on them at all about, hey, I know you have to hear this over and over. What about you? Are you getting therapy? And they're like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, it doesn't go. And I think now more than ever, that is important, that the focus is shifting to say that they really need that too. And that can help when they're out on patrol. And I mean, I believe, and you let me know too, you're on that, but that will help with situations that can get very triggering and intense if we can help them help piece of it.
100%. And it kind of goes hand in hand with any helping profession, that you can't do your best job as a helper if you yourself are not okay. And you know, when I think about stop after stop, wreck after wreck, tragedy after tragedy that they have to see, you know, you can certainly become hardened or calloused as a result of seeing that. And if you don't, I don't know, process some of that, or allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to connect with what's happening around you, the human experience, I can see how that could build into a pretty extreme burnout over time. And that's not necessarily the folks that we would want taking care of these tragedies, you know, and no no offense to them in any way, but that's not going to be the most effective first responder if they're burnout. And so, you know, beyond just them deserving and needing as a human being to be able to recover from their job, there's also the aspect that they can't necessarily do their jobs as well if they're not addressing their mental health.
Absolutely. So, and you know, one of my questions is, why is mental health awareness so important for this group of people? And I think you answered a lot of that. Is there anything else you would like to add to that?
You know, other than that, this is a group that when you first get into law enforcement, a lot, kind of with several different careers, I think you have this very high hope of what it's going to be like. You have almost a romanticized view of what it's going to be like. And pretty quickly out of the academy, from what I've been told by many troopers, many law enforcement officers, it becomes pretty clear that the majority of the work is actually, you know, not situations that they necessarily look forward to dealing with. So then you have a 20-year career of, you know, we hope we get to 20 years so they can retire, but a 25-year career of really just kind of trudging through. And we know that law enforcement suicide is actually much higher every single year without fail than line of duty deaths. So suicide awareness within the law enforcement field is something that we are just now starting to really talk about and tackle. And it's something that is exponentially higher in law enforcement than any community.
So imagine with this and this knowledge you have that a lot of the work you're doing is not just the counseling aspect of it. Are there trainings and awareness type things that you're doing within the DPS community that you're working in?
Yes, absolutely. That's a really big piece of my job here is going around practically the state and training about secondary traumatic stress, about wellness, about financial wellness, even about family life and balancing your career with your family. I mean, really anything wellness wise, we're out there trying to train because those are not things they teach in the academy, and those are not things that really people stop to think about a lot, especially in a paramilitary organization. And so DPS, in my opinion, is leading the way in terms of mental health in law enforcement because they have, you know, hired positions like mine that are literally only here to provide help to the DPS first responders and their families. And so, yes, there's a lot of prevention as well going on.
Okay. Is there any specialty type trainings that you can think of that you're giving to them? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have quite a wide range. I think the most recent one I did was psychological considerations in crisis or hostage negotiations. That was a really interesting one because I found that it was extremely applicable. Our knowledge as therapists really helps them understand these folks who are either holding people hostage or about to commit suicide, and just sharing some of our knowledge with why people are in that state of mind, the best way to respond to them, the wrong way to respond to them. It saves lives. And so those are the ones that I really enjoy is, you know, specific applicable things that they can take with them and apply out in the field.
That's great to hear that psychological impact of the people that they're going to be interacting with.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like new ways of learning for them, new tactics, right? Than what.
Yes.
maybe they're used to or were taught. And shifting just a little bit, I want to know this. You and I both coming from a children's advocacy center, our work was centered around children, and you worked with mainly teenagers. You're like the teenager whisperer.
Yes, I love them.
Like going from working with children and teens to with adults and families there.
The cool thing about this job, I think, is I kind of work with everyone, and I have a few teenagers on my caseload, but yes, the majority are adults and the majority are commissioned officers, which is really just a very unique group of people. So, it's been a learning curve. It certainly has been. I've had to learn jargon that I never knew, radio calls, things like that I never thought I would need as a therapist. So it's with any job, you have to learn the culture, and that's been a shift for me. But I luckily have been able to see several of the officers, teenagers, little kiddos as well. And it just makes my day. It's certainly a huge spot in my heart. I'm never gonna not want to see kiddos, They're just so rewarding to see. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what would you want other professionals in your field to know?
Specifically about my work now, or just overall with everything?
Is there anything you can think of that if you had that couple of minutes to say, this is what I want you to know about our work, the importance, and it can be from your work in the past about the sexual abuse field?
I think regarding my first job at the CAC, the biggest piece that I would want people or society or the public to know is that sexual abuse occurs way more often than you think. It's actually the estimated statistics are 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys before the age of 18, but that's just the reported cases. And so you can imagine it's probably much higher. And that's a pretty astounding statistic to a lot of people. So I think the biggest message that I would want to give to families, professionals, everyone is just educate yourself. Ask the hard questions, don't be afraid. And you may not know exactly what to say or the perfect thing to say if a client discloses sexual abuse or any type of abuse or neglect to you. But you literally just holding that space with them and being there to listen, and then of course follow up appropriately and report, is the single most important thing you can do for that kiddo or adult even. And regarding my career now and kind of the shift that I've had here at DPS, I think something that I would want people to know is that this job that these folks are doing, like I said earlier, isn't just a job. And for a lot of them, it is a calling. And a lot of times they don't want to do the things that they're being asked to do by their chain of command. And so my only message is, that they're people too. I know, and there's absolutely 100% appropriate and valid reason for change to be made, and situations that needed to be brought to the forefront about law enforcement. But I can tell you just from my experiences, the majority of these folks are not, they're not hateful, and they want to do good, and they want to help people.
With those things being brought to the forefront, do you feel that is something that is making its way through the organization that you're with?
Yes. There's been some really good, brave conversations amongst not only, peers, but the chain of command, the people who are up top. There are panels that we're having, very hard discussions amongst African-American officers, specifically how they're feeling in this day and age, being kind of stuck on both sides of the fence here. Just feeling very conflicted, but also, really wanting to put a certain message out there. There's a lot of discussion going on, and I've been really pleased to see that, because we know nothing gets better without talking and without discussing it, bringing it to the forefront.
Absolutely, and I think, and I don't know, there's this organization around the area, James Joyce Consulting, and she does a lot, her and her team go into a lot of organizations and talk about, it's called a groundwater analysis of racial inequities. And I know she's gone into some law enforcement agencies, other agencies that typically might be hard to get into, but having these very difficult conversations, awesome. And it's very enlightening for the people who are involved in it. So I'm happy that there's things like that around, and sometimes, and part of this is me sharing resources as well. So those of you watching, and her consulting firm can come into your organization and have that really big discussion. And we know it's ongoing work. So Megan, awesome. That to hear that's going on, and that you were there to help facilitate some of that. You're just an incredibly easy person to talk to. And I think that's just so wonderful that people will be able to have that conversation and do some of that. Yeah. So, well, I know that you're working. Normally, if I were talking to someone in private practice, I could ask them about their information and where to reach them. Yours is a little different. Yeah. But I'm sure that if someone really wanted to get in contact with you on Facebook and ask you any questions about your work.
Well, and I have actually extricated myself from social media as well. So, but I have a LinkedIn. So, and I can also, my professional email is M like Megan, and then Humphrey, HUMPHREY counseling@gmail.com. And you're welcome always to ask me any questions, or if you need resources. I love helping, and I love meeting other professionals. So I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what in this little project of mine is about, just to hear professionals talk about what they're passionate about, what you bring to the table, what you learn and can help others with. And yes, just meeting other professionals is so much fun, whether they're doing the work, exact work you're doing or not. There's always that bit of, we share this collective, we care about people, and we care about their mental health, especially those of us that are trauma informed. We hear a lot. And I'm so happy that you mentioned we all need to do that work as well, especially those of us working with trauma, and we're subject to, we're at risk of secondary trauma from this as well. So thank you for bringing that up. Is there anything else about you or your work you want us to know about? Anything we didn't cover?
I'm just super nerdy when it comes to counseling. I love neurobiology. I love EMDR. You know, I pretty much operate on a case-to-case basis, but typically I fall within the realm of CBT or EMDR, and very client-centered approach. But I just love people. I love working with people. I'm really enjoying this shift in my career, and I just really enjoy being here with you today, Lacey. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. So yeah, again, a round of applause for Megan. It was good to see you. So yeah, thank you. Those of you, stay tuned. I'll be having some more uploaded. I'm going to put some of these wherever I can, as much as I can, on Instagram or Facebook or on my website. So stay tuned for the links. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Take care, Lacey. Bye-bye.